Well, happy Friday. Today we're going to continue where we left off last week with episode 2 of Netflix's Waffles and Mochi. Waffles and Mochi is a really well-made show. However, I've noticed sometimes they forget some of the most important applications of the ingredients they're showcasing on the show. Cocktails. I understand. Not only do the ingredients featured in this show make fantastic additions to cocktails, but the cocktail itself makes the show so much more enjoyable. So today's episode features salt. While salt is a fantastic ingredient in food, it's also a very, very welcome ingredient to our cocktails. So we're gonna do a slight play on the classic margarita. Margaritas are typically 3 ingredients: tequila, orange liqueur, and lime juice. We're gonna alter those ingredients just ever so slightly by using a mezcal rather than a tequila. And of course, rounding out everything is going to be a fantastic rim of salt. But enough talk about it. Let's go to the bar and get this thing started.
Listen to your vegetables and eat your parents with waffles and mochi. Salt!
So what is a mezcal? Let's start off by talking about the traditional ingredient, tequila. All tequila is mezcal, but not all mezcals are tequila. Tequila is a type of mezcal, very similar to how there are different types of whiskeys. Bourbon, scotch, they're all whiskeys, but they have different definitions based on what they're made of and where they're made. Tequila is specifically made from the blue agave plant in one of 5 different regions in Mexico. There's over 30 different varieties of agave that mezcal can be made out of. One of the key things that you want to watch for is what is the percent of agave. By definition, both mezcal and tequila can be called mezcal or tequila as long as they have 51% agave, which means the other 49% is going to be made from something else, usually some sort of grain. Pay attention to these labels and make sure that when you're grabbing your spirit, you're grabbing one that is made 100% out of agave. Before we can start making our cocktail, we need to prepare our glass. Pour some kosher salt onto a small plate. Run a lime wedge around the edge of your glass, and then run the glass through the salt on your plate, just coating the rim of your glass. We're first off gonna add 1.5 ounces of our 100% agave mezcal. I'm using an artisanal variety, 400 Conejos from the Oaxacan region. Next, we're gonna add 1 ounce of Grand Marnier. Grand Marnier is an orange liqueur, very similar to Cointreau and Triple Sec. Grand Marnier has the unique addition of cognac. Cognac is a brandy made of a very specific grape in a very specific region of France, just like tequila is to mezcal. We're gonna add about 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. Now, in my experience, this typically comes to be about the juice from 1 lime. When getting juice directly from the fruit, I don't typically worry too much about measuring the exact amounts. Just eyeball it or do a little bit of research about how much juice you generally get from a fruit. With those 3 ingredients, we've satisfied everything we need for a margarita. Now, depending on your taste, you might like it a little bit sweeter, especially if you're ordering margaritas from restaurants. They're almost always sweetened. Since I do like my margaritas just a tad on the sweet side, I'm gonna add 1/2 ounce of honey syrup. Oftentimes with margaritas, you're gonna lean towards an agave syrup because that is also made from the agave plant and it just kind of goes well with the drink. I like the addition of honey syrup for a couple of reasons. 1, it's easy to make myself and I always prefer making my own ingredients. 2, the honey element adds a different type of sweetness than the agave, and just for my taste in general, I tend to lean that way. It's a little bit brighter, a little bit more forward, and just gives a slightly different note. Add ice to your shaker and shake for about 30 seconds. The goal of shaking is to incorporate all of our ingredients together as well as dilute the beverage so that we get a beautiful balance of all the ingredients. When your shaker gets frosty and a little too cold to touch, that's when you're done. Strain this into our salt-rimmed glass with a large form ice cube. I prefer large form ice cubes because we've already shaken this beverage, and so it's already diluted quite a bit. By using the large form ice, it's gonna control that dilution so we won't get any more, at least not too fast. And there we have it, the Mezcal Margarita. Cheers. Swapping out mezcal for the classic tequila adds just this really complex smokiness that takes this drink to a completely different level. It's the same as if you were to swap out a scotch for the bourbon or rye in an old fashioned. It completely changes the drink, but yet gives you the same elements you're craving with a different flavor profile. Using Grand Marnier instead of the classic Cointreau or Triple Sec gives us a whole new level of barrel aging. Because the cognac is barrel aged, which typically a clear tequila or the orange liqueur wouldn't be otherwise, this gives us another depth of flavor that we just wouldn't have from using the traditional ingredients. That's not to say that traditional ingredients are bad or that this is better. It's just different. Now, the honey syrup is something that you may choose to do, you may choose not to. For me, if I'm drinking a margarita, I'm likely either sitting outside on a hot day or eating something spicy such as Mexican food. And I want that sweetness to cut through that heat element, whether it be temperature or my food ingredients. But remember, once you've added an ingredient, you can't take it out. So start with a little bit and add more as needed.
Add salt to taste. Got it. Seems simple enough.
This is a fantastic cocktail, and it's made fantastic by that rim of salt. The salt adds this tanginess and punches through the acidity from the lime juice. I hope one thing you've learned is this is an incredibly easy cocktail to make, and there's absolutely no reason to go out and buy a margarita mix. The margarita mix is just going to include other ingredients that you really don't want to put in your body, let alone the fact that they don't taste good. So stick to the classics and make your own. I hope you enjoy this drink, have a fantastic weekend, and in the spirit of waffles and mochi, thanks, Obama.